Hello and welcome to the Spirit Vessel Conversation Series, Professionals, Perspectives, and Deathcare. My name is Jessica Wirtz. I'm the founder of Spirit Vessel, and we're so glad you're here with us today. The Professionals, Perspectives, and Deathcare series is centered around conversations with professionals of all types in the deathcare and emotional wellness space. These conversations aim to bring awareness, acceptance, and normalization to the death and grieving process. If you enjoy these conversations, please consider sharing them on your favorite social media platform and be sure to sign up for our newsletter so that you'll be the first to know when a new conversation is released. With me today is my sister and Spirit Vessel co-founder, Amanda McClellan, and we are joined by our guest, Melissa Unfried.
Melissa is a licensed funeral director and non-practicing embalmer in Texas and Washington, and her sidekick, Kermit, is a certified therapy dog that has served over 500 families by her side. Melissa has worked in death care since 1996 and attended mortuary school in 2002. In 2016, she began to question the status quo vocally online and became known as the modern mortician. She has worked closely beside the founders of multiple green burial spaces and was the first funeral director in Texas to facilitate alkaline hydrolysis for a client in a state that still hasn't made it a legal option. She has also participated in the process of natural organic reduction and has an intimate knowledge of all eco-friendly forms of disposition. Melissa considers herself to be a professional and public resource, an eco-educator, an advocate, and an industry disruptor. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks for being here with us today. We're excited for this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. You bet. So we'll just get started by asking a little bit about your background and what brought you into the funeral industry. And then it's something that you've been in for quite a while. I'm sure you've seen so many things change over time, and what ultimately brought you to the green burial niche.
Oh man, so it kind of started out as a goof that I got into death care. It was like the summer before my senior year of high school. I remember my mom was in the kitchen. I was at the table watching the news, and these are all in the same room. And they were interviewing local family-owned businesses. And the second person they interviewed was a female, and she owned a funeral home, and they were looking for summer help. And my mom thought she was being smart from the kitchen. She goes, "Oh, perfect job for you. You should work there." And I looked up from my brows at the kitchen table. And this is the 90s. I'm wearing like a dark tank top and a flannel shirt and my combat boots. And I'm like, all right, I will. And I got the job because I clean up well. And the lady knew my grandfather, and that was my foot in the door. And initially it was being able to take somebody that had been sick and broken and restoring them, the art of everything behind it. But after schooling, the more questions I began to ask, the more I was like, this is set up for failure for the family, because they're not being told what options there are. And that's when I started delving into, why are we putting people in boxes and other boxes and pumping them full of chemicals? And that's when I discovered green burial was it was just emerging. Like, I mean, even though burial is something that's been around since the beginning of living things, it was just starting to get traction again in the industry. And so I grabbed it like a dog on a bone, and I haven't let go since. And since then, my knowledge has expanded to the other eco-friendly options. And I just think if it's legal, moral, and ethical, we should all know about it and do it.
100%. And I had to laugh when you said about your tank top and your combat boots, because I think you'd fit right in today. That style's all come back.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, I got to break out my docs.
Absolutely. But yeah, like you said, the work that educators like yourself are doing right now in helping people understand all these options for disposition is so important, because as we know, we've been limited for so long into this little box of what we can do, and people don't realize how many options there are. So what were some of the first, what got you onto the green burial niche? Like, was there a person or a company, an organization, an experience that you were kind of introduced to that through?
So initially it started with me I worked my apprenticeship near a pioneer cemetery in West Texas. And I was asking the grave sexton one day, the gentleman that took care of the property, kept the records, after I had watched a company come in with a big truck and drive over graves and dig a grave with a backhoe, that just everything that went into it seemed excessive, when on this side of the drive there were burials that had been there for maybe hundreds of years, and I know they weren't using all that equipment. And come to find out, some of those bodies had been just box burials, and some of them maybe were in a shroud at one point or a blanket. And I began to question, why are we doing it like this today? And I wasn't getting good answers. I was getting, the more questions I asked, it's like the more I was discovering how it just seemed set up for failure for the family, because you had the grave liner companies are in with the grave diggers, who are in with the cemetery guys, who are in with the funeral directors, who are in with the sheriff. I mean, it's just like all growing up in West Texas, and then beyond that, learning all the pieces and parts of small towns, and then how it involves big towns and death care. It's just like, I don't I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's like, you're gonna have to edit that part. I get stumped on this, because it's like, when you see all the working parts and all the padding of the pockets that happens in the background, it'll blow your mind. And this happens on a bigger scale with corporations, as much as it does in small town funeral homes too. So I mean, did I just totally go off the deep end with that?
No, Jess and I talk about these same things all the time, and that's, at Spirit Vessel, what we're trying to do is just give individuals and families the creativity and the ability to bring death back into the home, and really just take ownership of that again. And I think everything you were just speaking to kind of leads to that. It reminds me of something that a quote that Jess has shared on our Instagram, that death is a transformation, not a transaction, and so we're trying to bring that back into families' awareness, with the education you're doing, and letting them know all the options. So good stuff. So I'm going to let Jess is going to dive more into some of that aspect of things, but I am curious to know all about your dog Kermit. So tell us about Kermit.
Awesome. Well, Kermit is 6 years old now. He's a certified therapy dog. He's part border collie, part Aussie. And you know what? We did a DNA test, and great grandparent, a little bit of boxer in there. Who'd have thought? Because he looks all border collie to me. I did his canine good citizenship training first. I adopted him when he was 4 months old, and immediately immersed him in death care. He went on a death call with me that night and sat in the passenger seat of the van, rode with the decedent back to the crematory. And from then on, it was every day he was around death. And it was a little bit his personality, in the sense that he was already the kind of dog that wasn't going to jump on a person, that was a little bit more subdued, except when you got him around a ball or a pool. But it's like, I'm having these moments again, sorry. He just works well with people. It's like, some dogs have this ability to go up to somebody and be able to tell when they're hurting or they're needing attention. And some dogs are just like, I'm going to be in everybody's face, licking everybody, jumping on everybody. And a lot of us experience that comfort when we're upset at home with our own animals. He seems to exhibit that with everybody. And I'm really fortunate that I'm able to share his gifts through the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nutshell, that's Kermit.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you work with any service grief therapy dog organizations, or on a larger scale, or you're just loving what Kermit's doing for your clients?
So we initially did all of our training through Austin Dog Alliance, who then changed their name to the Dog Alliance. And they had set their standards based on Therapy Dogs International. And so it was the equivalent of that, the team that we were working with out of Austin, Texas. When COVID hit and we moved to the Seattle area, we reached out to Pet Partners, I believe it was. Yes. And we're still waiting to get onto a team, but in the meantime, we're doing agility training and stuff in the background to keep his mind active. And he is still working with me daily in the funeral home.
That's awesome. And Jess and I know one of our sisters has a border collie, and we know they're such a smart breed. They're really an amazing breed of dog.
Oh yeah. And he has a border collie button. The minute you pull the ball out or you say we're going to go swimming, it's game on.
That's awesome. So we know just through your Instagram and your website, you have so many projects, and that your gift shop online and all of the eco-friendly products that you offer. So tell us about a few of your favorite products, or just your experience with being able to share those resources with people.
Oh, so some of my products in the industry that are actually available to the consumers without having like a wholesale account as a funeral director right now is Passages International, and not because they sent me a mini casket recently so I could take pictures with it. No, but seriously, I've been a fan of their products for a very, very long time. I will say that's probably one of the first green burial caskets. When I had my blank moment a minute ago and I was thinking about the cemetery, I was like, there's another part of this question I'm not getting. And it was like, what did I see? I saw a wicker basket casket on Facebook, and it was a Passages International product at the time. And they're based out of New Mexico too. They're not a family owned small town business. So my next one would probably be, there's a glass company that I can't think of their name right now. That's why you got to have good editing skills, but and that's all I got on that right now.
Yeah. We love it. We love all the options that you're providing for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to second everything you were saying there in the conversation earlier, because I think in your line of work where you're so enveloped in it and you see the day-to-day and you see the options or the lack thereof that are being presented to people, and you actually see the process of what death looks like, after somebody has passed, and what actually does happen to the body. And I just want to second that. I guess it feels like it's an invasive process a lot of the time, or it must feel invasive, everything from digging up, the land to putting in a prefab box that costs hundreds of or tens of thousands or even just thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Process so expensive, to embalming itself, and just the process of embalming and how invasive that is to the body. So for those of us who don't know, or for those who are listening who aren't completely aware, I'm going to ask you, talk to us a little bit about your feelings on embalming, and in any which way you want to take that.
I think it's great for cultural purposes. If we don't have access to technology like refrigeration, I'm not going to yuck somebody else's yum when it comes to culture and religion, but what people don't know, I think, is very important. What happens to the body in order to do that? I was actually reached out to, and this may be crazy, by PETA on Instagram the other day, and they did reach out to multiple funeral directors, and I'm not sure who's biting and who's not yet, but they're wanting to do a comparison between leather and embalming people, and wearing leather goods and embalming people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's pretty good. People really genuinely do not realize what we put the body through. Not only are we draining the blood out of the circulatory system, but we are filling it full of water. And I don't care what embalmers say right now. They're on this kick that embalming is natural. It's natural products. It is still not safe. If you can't drink it, it's not okay. If you can't pick that bottle up and go, it is not okay. And quit. I love you guys. You guys are my colleagues, but it's not accurate. That's greenwashing. That's literally greenwashing. So that's going on in the industry right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, this chemical embalming fluid, formaldehyde, this natural formaldehyde is mixed with water. It's pumped into the body and it firms the tissues. But it doesn't take care of the cavity of the body. That's where all the bacteria is in your gut, right? So then they take this long hollow sword that's like this long, and it's really sharp at the end, and it's hooked up to a hose. This is where it's going to get so fun. And it sucks the fluid out of your abdomen, and the embalmer has to focus 2 inches over and 2 inches up from the navel, and they stab your loved one, and they aim that thing up at the heart, the lungs, into the throat area. They're sucking all the fluids out of there. So you can tell where you're hitting based on the fluid. If it's yellow and you're in the pelvic cavity, you're in the bladder. If it's, brown and green and you're in the pelvic area, it's the bowels. If it's frothy and you're in this area up here, you're in the lungs. If it's dark red and your focus is up in this area, you're in the heart. All of that is sucked out. It all goes into the sewer system. Just like where you go to the bathroom or where you wash your hands, it goes the same place. And then after all that fluid is sucked out, then keep in mind, you've still got the fluid in your venous system, in your capillaries and all that stuff. They've tied that off so it'll perfuse through to the tissues and make them firm. And then all this liquid that's in your cavity now, or that they've sucked out, they now have to kind of like firm that stuff up. So they put a cavity fluid, which is also incredibly toxic. So toxic that if you spill even a drop of it, you have to vacate the room because your eyes, your nose, everything just starts hurting and burning. Can't tell me that's natural. So anyway, you have to pump that, a whole bottle of that or 2 into the cavity. And then some embalmers will leave it for a few days and suck it back out. But there's still some that's in there. And then some of them will just leave it. So there's that sack of liquid that goes in a casket that you're sealing up real nice and tight because you don't want the bugs to get in, right? Guess what's not coming out? The gases and the fluids. So bodies in mausoleums, when you smell stuff or you see stuff dripping down the sides, it's exactly what you think it is, despite what everybody tells you. It's exactly what you think it is. It's decaying bodies all around you. They had to make a law in Texas that you had to shrink wrap the caskets that were going into the mausoleums because they were exploding.
Oh my word. Wow. Okay. I'm going to put a disclaimer on this interview, but the graphic description, I feel like, is something that so many of us have no idea what this process is, and all for what purpose. Like, give us a little bit of history, and then we'll move on to a different topic here. But I'm just curious, like, to wrap that up, like, for the purpose of making a body look presentable and beautiful to the family. And I know historically this really happened around Civil War times, from my knowledge, and just being able to preserve the body to bring a body home. And still currently, this is our most common practice, I would say, but now cremation's taking over as well, right?
Yes, but the embalmers and the educators are fighting tooth and nail to get you to embalm your body prior to cremation. Have that service. It's that memory picture. How many people do you know these days that are like, I don't want people looking at me when I'm dead? No, I don't care if you have Susie Q, who does the best lashes in town, come and do me up. I don't want anybody staring at me either. Right. So it's like, people want to remember you when you were good and healthy, and we don't need to do all this. And if it just came since the Civil War, we're not talking about thousands of years of tradition that it's like, it's just change it. Like, if it's religious purposes, and yes, you want them to look waxy and beautiful in that casket at the Catholic Church or the Baptist Church, or if it's just the aesthetic and grandma always wanted to look like that when she died, that's fine. That we can do that. There's people that can do that, but it shouldn't be the norm. Right. That's why people are like, direct cremation, I don't want any of it.
Well, it's an amazing thing that we have so many options now, and that you're educating on it. And I love how passionate you clearly are about your work. And Tell us a little bit more about alkaline hydrolysis. I'm curious about this process and just what you'd share maybe to anyone who didn't know what this is currently.
Alkaline hydrolysis is the fancy science word for water cremation. You might have also heard it called aquamation or green cremation or resomation or flameless cremation. We're farting this one up already because of all the different names it has. The easiest way for the public to palate it is to call it water cremation because it is reduction of the body by water instead of fire. The definition of flame cremation is reduction of the body by fire. So what it is it's somewhere between a spa day for your corpse and what you've seen on Breaking Bad. It's like, oh my gosh, no, it's really not that bad at all. The body is placed into what looks like a giant washing machine, but like straight in, like laid in. And then it's run with it's heated with like steam, solar power, just like, it's amazing. There's no fossil fuels used. There's no emissions. The water that's in it is reincorporated back into nature or goes back into the municipality. And it's considered actually very, very good for the municipal water system because of the pH neutrality and everything that's in the water after the process. So when you consider you're like, what, scientifically, maybe 80% water, you go in this machine, it fills with water, and then they add 5% lye solution, which is sodium hydroxide, sodium potassium flake mix, right? And so you disintegrate into liquid, which is like fats, amino acids, salts, peptides, all the beautiful, wonderful things for plant life that they're just like bringing on, right? And so it looks like urine, the liquid part that's left, because basically that's what it is. We're not talking sludge, like the deep end of the spectrum of Breaking Bad. We're talking about like a happy little spa day that looks like yellow liquid. And actually when you shake up a little vial of it, it's kind of really cool how the fats and the peptides will just shimmer like glitter. It's amazing. If we could give growlers of grandma, that would be such a hit, but we're not there yet. But we can get there. But yeah, that water can be reincorporated back into nature. Currently, it goes in these big gallon things and is held or recycled. And then the bone portion comes out so pure. Okay, if anybody has seen cremated remains, how they look chunky, like I like to say like kitty litter, because it's pretty dang close to kitty litter. Except you don't have the blue crystals and the nice pleasant smell. Depending on whose house you're at. The bones that are left are very white, and when you touch them, the process has been so gentle, they turn into almost like a powder. When I've compared bags of them in the past, people are really quick to be smart and say, oh, it looks like a bag of cocaine. Yeah, but it also looks like a bag of flour or a bag of baking soda. I mean, like, it's a bag of powder.
Right.
And that is actually pH neutral. It's fine for the environment to scatter around. If you've ever been in a cemetery and seen like burnt parts of the grass or chunks of concrete, somebody just dumped their loved one and it rained and they turned into a block of concrete. So it doesn't happen like that with water cremated remains.
Wow. Well, you're a wealth of information on all the details that I'm sure so many people are going to be fascinated to hear. And
yeah, especially once I get warmed up, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, let's switch over a little bit. I'm curious to see, like, or hear, what are some of the things you wish families knew about their end of life options that they typically don't?
Number one is still embalming is not a requirement. If a funeral home tells you it's a requirement, it's because they're not prepared and they don't have a refrigerator, and that's on them, and you should call a different funeral home. The second thing is all the options. So again, I was offering water cremation to Texans when we didn't have a facility in the state because it wasn't legal yet. I was flying the decedents to the closest facility we had, which was in St. Louis, Missouri. It was a family-owned business there. I sent our first gentleman out with a box of Texas soil in his shipping container. Everybody goes out in like a little wooden casket, and they all since the plane's going there anyway, it was a carbon neutral trip. The decedent just rides on the underbelly of the plane with the cargo. And when he got there, he took the box of dirt and placed it underneath the machine. So this gentleman was technically water cremated over Texas soil in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is not completely unaffordable for people. A flight to another state for a decedent is $600. So with planning, this can be done even if it's not legal in your state. Besides water cremation, another one that people aren't aware of that they should be, that so many people get excited about, is the natural organic reduction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it is $600 a flat rate within the states to move bodies on the undercarriage of a flight. I've never known
From
that.
Texas to St. Louis with Southwest Airlines, yes. It does depend on the different airlines that you use in the different parts of the country. It could get up to $1,500. As long as you're staying within the states, I don't think it's going to go much higher than that unless fuel gets too much more ridiculous. I mean, circle back to this article or this interview in 10 years and we'll all be laughing at the price of the flights.
Probably.
Yeah.
So your clients that work with you that went to Missouri and had the water cremation, did they know to come to you because you were an advocate for this, or how did they find you and know that this was an option for them?
I set about that the way that I did with the current business that I'm at. It wasn't on the price list when I joined the company. I found a way that I was going to get it if someone wanted it, and I put it on the price list. And I already had the relationship with the person professionally in St. Louis. So all I was doing was just waiting for a family to ask me, what is this? So when you sit as a funeral director with a family, the best, after you get some information, you want to know burial or cremation. Well, from cremation, if they pick that, don't immediately think flame. You want to ask them flame or water. When you do that, you blew their mind. What is water? If they haven't heard about it, what is water? You tell them about it. So far, my turn rate is 20% turn to water that don't know about it, that never knew about it before. Part of I think it would be greater if the price wasn't so different, but because it's so hard to find right now, and because it is still legalizing in each state and it's becoming more prominent, it takes time for everybody to get a machine.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what you're up against.
Yeah. And how many states currently offer it? Are you aware?
Believe at last check, it was 18 states have it legalized, 17 or 18. And it's just like with the natural organic reduction, each state has to legalize it. So what they've been doing for the last few states like Washington and Oregon and Vermont, they're legalizing these hand in hand together, I believe. They're introduced, I know they did I don't know if they did in Vermont. They did in Washington and Oregon where they legalized the two on the same, and they did it in Colorado too. So that seems to be the easiest way to get them both through. The biggest pushback has been from Catholic churches. And it blows my mind. How is it okay for you to burn a body, desecrate a body, mutilate a body with embalming, but you can't return them to nature?
Mm-hmm.
This is where we have a problem, a disconnect.
This is more than a disconnect. It's absolutely insane if you ask me.
I agree.
You know, since stepping into this work, I've learned so many of the options myself, and I'm continuing to educate myself, and it's all available. It's all out there. You know, all you have to do is a Google search to see what your options are. And I just feel like still though, there's so much fear in this realm. And it's like, how do you even get people to a Google search for themselves?
Well, and then beyond that, Google is so manipulated by businesses these days. For example, bless their hearts, they're doing the right thing for their business. But if I type in green burial in Washington, you're going to have Earth Funeral pop up. they're a human composting place. You're going to have return home pop up because they're using keyword searches. So if somebody's genuinely looking for conservation burial or green burial through like a nonprofit, they're going to have to search down. And a lot of people don't know to do that because all the sponsored posts and ads are all at the top. So you really have to dig and look for reputable sources to find the information, because it seems to be so hit and miss as to where it's at.
Yeah, it's usually on like the 16th page, not the first or second. I'm smart to Google these days. We're on to you, Google.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So after all of, your experience and, the options you're aware of, how do you choose to be buried, or, what is your body disposition that you choose after you pass?
I want to go into a conservation burial park, hopefully near or like an area that I'm living in right now, like in the forest, wrapped in a blanket, laid in a shallow grave full of flower petals. Yeah, that's what I want.
That just sounds like yummy. It does sound like going home to me. And so natural. It's just, the more chemicals and the more things we need to purchase just to let our bodies leave sounds so ludicrous these days.
Speaking of that, real quick, so the whole purchase thing, like the mushroom burial shroud, things like that people aren't aware are predatory products. That's another thing that beyond Google, you've got to do all that background search on death. And like most recently, that mushroom coffin that came out. Have you seen that?
Now talk to us about it.
So it's a mycelium coffin that's not made yet, but it's like in prototype or something. How are you going to ship that from overseas to consumers in the US? How are funeral directors going to keep from damaging it? How are you going to get funeral directors to show it to the client families? How would client families store it if they were to order it for themselves? Why are you going to introduce non-native mycelium to a non-native area? And that was a part of the problem with the mushroom burial shroud, besides the fact that it didn't work. It worked in a terrarium in her kitchen with fingernail clippings and hair. But how much money did she make off of that? How much, that's my question in products like this, like that Capsuli Monday thing that puts you in a little egg and a tree sprouts out the top. How many green burials have I done that the family plants something on top and the body kills it? Because just like with composting, the ground heats up and it's going to kill new life. It's going to kill the root growth. So, I mean, we could be taking this back to simple things, but there's even people out there that are trying to get onto that too. And it's like, why?
But why? Yeah.
But
when a new field opens up and there can be innovation, there will always be people who take it to a degree that it's absolutely ineffective, probably just for the financial aspect of it, or just for some unique option to throw out there. But what is the benefit and what is the actual cost of that when you look at it?
Yeah.
My viewpoint on this, and Amanda's too, since coming into Spirit Vessel with me, is just so much of what can you do to bring people back to themselves, back to the most natural state, in their most natural state. How do we, handle loss together? How do we grieve together? How do we create these spaces together without introducing a million products? Like, how do we hold this emotional space for each other? And see it less as a product industry and more as an emotional transaction, which of course there is both there. Speak to us a little bit about some changes that you would like to see in the funeral industry that could better serve people who are grieving, because I know that's, aside from the products and aside from body disposition, you see a lot of families.
Yeah, I think the industry needs to be more accepting of people that are doing creative things like you are, because the cost of you to bring your product to convention is astronomical unless you're backed by big finance bros or different things of that nature. It's like they make it inaccessible for you. There's an example, like a company called Parting Stone, who takes cremated remains and turns them into tangible, holdable stones. They've been around forever and ever. I've seen them for a while, and people still in the industry don't know they're there because maybe they weren't at convention for a while, and then they're at convention, and the directors that need to be seeing this stuff aren't being told by higher ups that are going to convention. And then you have to learn about it on social media to be able to tell the family. And nobody wants to talk about death. So nobody's going to put you on the Oprah show to talk about your little rocks that you make out of cremated remains. I mean, it's just that kind of thing. Unless you're like getting Gwyneth Paltrow to make goop eggs out of your rocks, you're going to have a hard time going viral with a Deathcare product.
Yeah, we're aware of that product, and they're really beautiful, and they're just like, I would absolutely want to own those for a pet or for, yeah, there's just clearly a lot of intention and meaning in that product.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it works. It's a lot of big business. It's a lot of corporation that you're dealing with. And, you know, you never know where you're going to reach into this field, but I think just having the focus of reaching somewhere is the right move, you know, especially with the intention behind it. So we're really interested in helping families create senses of ritual and ceremony after one passes, or helping them set that up even before someone passes to have like a living memorial. And it's really like directed to the emotional aftercare and just emotional caring of a family and individuals, and how to support people through the transition that's happening for them.
I've seen a huge disconnect and a lack of that in the industry as it became more about when you get corporations, big corporations involved in things like hospitals and other things, and death care, vet care. Things become a number, and it becomes less heart focused and family focused. And that's one of the benefits of working for a smaller firm or a family owned firm, is that you can reconnect with the families. And that, what you're talking about, is something I've seen that's missing from traditional death care. I was seeing it more in the green funeral space. Intent, ritual, new tradition. The products and the things that you guys are doing is what I was seeing raw and happening naturally with some of these families. And yeah, I think it's a very healing process to have your loved one whisked away and you get back a box, but there's nothing in the in-between.
Yeah.
I think it hurts the grieving process.
I think it hurts humans as a race. It's just like, we're clearly doing something backwards here, that we honor people while they live, and then as we die and pass, it's like there's just a void of conversation around it. We're really not honoring life that way, to me. So this is really like allowing people to recognize that, talk about it, hold a little space to share about it even. And it doesn't have to be somber. It could be anything. Like, ceremony is a place to hold the paradox. It could be hilarious. You know, everybody could be telling funny stories, helping people prompt the conversation so that they get to have that emotional space to share for a moment, so they actually feel connected in what they're feeling and what they're going through and how they're grieving together. So
one of the most recent stories I'd heard was a guy that was trying to get his family to talk to him about what his end of life plans were, but they kept canceling on him. So he decided to do a wine flight night, and he invited some sommeliers. I don't even know if I'm saying the right word, but he made it fancy, and he didn't tell his family what was happening. And they came and they all had this little orange folder at their plate. And after they had a few glasses of wine, he told them to open the folder, and he said, "These are my death plans." And they made it turned in from something scary that everybody was, we're not dealing with this now, we're not talking about that, you're not sick, to something that was fun, that is no doubt ingrained in that family's memory. Who's to say they're not going to do something magical and special like that for the next person?
absolutely.
Who says they can't now?
Absolutely. That was the invitation. That's the permission to make it something else other than this topic that we have only one way of talking about it. And it's with a ton of fear around it. And yeah, how do you invite people into a space to have new perspective on something?
Yeah.
We actually spoke last night to Lisa Paul of the Death Deck. And are you familiar with her? Friends?
Yeah.
Cool. She's wonderful. And we had a great conversation. And she was saying, we were asking her what some of her favorite questions and the cards were, or what some of her favorite places to play the game was. And she said, I go out to a wine bar with my friends and we just, people are really intimidated at first, but after a glass of wine, you're like deep into these conversations together, and it's a game. So she found a way to enter the conversation in a playful way, which I just think is so brilliant.
Yep. I love the colors of her deck. It's very light, and I think it's really a good conversation starter. I think her idea of taking it to a wine bar, that's good. I'm gonna have to try that. That'd be nice.
Totally. So talk to us a little bit here about what is something that's inspiring you regarding the direction of your work, or any projects you're working on currently.
Something that is inspiring me. There is a big Deathcare documentary in the works that is going to definitely pull the curtain back on what's going on. The deep corporate pieces and everything in between. I don't know that I can't say who it is yet, but I can say keep an eye out on my social media, because when you might see them filming me on my Instagram, definitely in October when we're at the National Funeral Director Association convention. And then at that time, I'm probably going to be able to show you who's involved. Just stay tuned. It'll be good.
That's a heightened conversation. I'm curious to hear more, but also a closed door conversation. Got it. Fun. And so, great. Well, that's exciting because we obviously need widespread education as well.
Yeah.
And so
it will definitely talk all the options.
Okay, great. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to listen. We'll be following you. Anything else you want to share as far as places people can go to hear more about your work or find more education in this realm?
Well, Instagram's turning into a cesspool, so I'd say look for content from people in the death care industry on TikTok. There are some great people out there that are doing a great job as a younger generation than I am, educating, like Hollis Funeral Home, or Jasmine the Mortician out of California. There's another Mimi out of Florida. They're up and coming, and some Eileen Hollis has been in the industry with her dad for several years now, and seeing their perspective and what they're learning and how they're dealing with things with the public is really, really eye-opening. So that excites me, having other people that are out there educating and opening the public's eye to the working gears behind death care.
Absolutely.
I'm excited for them for that.
I'm excited.
And for you guys. What you guys are doing is awesome. And I can't wait to see a family do that. Take advantage of that.
Thank you. We are thrilled to be offering it, and just having anyone who needs it, use it. And that's the goal of it. And we actually had Penny, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Penny, hospice nurse Penny on Instagram.
Yeah.
She is hilarious. We had her on for one of our interviews, and I love her approach because it's so much humor, but she just has this way of like putting it out there without any apology. She's very raw about it. And I think it's so needed, that type of approach to this.
Definitely with hospice care. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. This has been such a fun conversation. We're so glad you were joining us tonight and sharing everything that you did. And we can't wait to post this and have people listen in. So, and where can people find out more about your work? Website, TikTok, Instagram? What do you have for them?
My website will always have links to be able to connect with me on the social media education stuff that I do, as well as email. So that's themodernmortician.com. And yeah, Instagram, TikTok, whatever.
Mortician on both of them. Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. This has been super fun. Thanks so much for joining us, Melissa.
Thank you. And please tip your editor.
I'll let her know.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Melissa.
I had a great time. Thank you.
Likewise. As a reminder to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it on your favorite social media platform and be sure to sign up for our newsletter at spiritvessel.com/newsletter so you'll be the first to know when the new conversations are released. Thanks again.